There are moments in global history when silence is more powerful than words, moments when one statement, delivered calmly and firmly, shatters illusions built over decades. Friends, one such moment has arrived, and it has shaken the very core of Washington's confidence. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar is not a man of unnecessary dramatics. He does not shout, he does not rant, and he does not posture for applause. But when he finally speaks, the world listens. And this time, America could not believe what it heard. For decades, the United States has been the unquestioned referee of international affairs. It decided the rules of democracy, the rules of trade, even the rules of morality itself. Washington's word was law. Nations feared its sanctions, courted its approval, and shaped their policies with American interests in mind. But now India has calmly told the United States something it was never prepared to hear. We will not be dictated to. We will not compromise our sovereignty. And we will not bend to pressures disguised as friendship. This is not just another diplomatic disagreement. It is a tectonic shift. Because when India, the world's largest democracy, the fastest-growing major economy, and a rising global power, chooses to say no to American pressure, it does not just speak for itself. It speaks for dozens of nations who have quietly felt the same but dared not voice it. For nearly 80 years, America enjoyed a unique privilege. After World War II, it rebuilt Europe, policed Asia, and established institutions like the IMF and the World Bank that carried its fingerprints on every page. American influence was not simply dominance, it was identity. To be part of the global order meant in many ways to accept America's leadership. But history has cycles. No empire remains forever unquestioned. The British discovered it. The Soviets discovered it. And now the United States is beginning to hear an echo of the same truth. When power is shared, dominance becomes fragile. And this is why Jaishankar's words landed like a thunderclap in Washington. He didn't rage against the West. He didn't accuse or insult. He simply unveiled a truth America has long resisted acknowledging, that the 21st century will not be dictated from a single capital. Instead, it will be a century of balance, a century of multiple voices, multiple powers, and multiple centers of gravity. Friends, think about this. For decades, India was told whom it could trade with, what weapons it could buy, and how it should vote in international forums. Every choice was shadowed by American expectations. Yet India endured, patiently, quietly, watching, waiting. But patience is not submission. Patience is preparation. And now India has reached the point where it can look the world's superpower in the eye and say, our choices will be made in New Delhi, not in Washington, not in Brussels, and not in Beijing. This message is powerful not because it is loud, but because it is unshakable. It carries the weight of a civilization that has survived for thousands of years, a nation that has endured colonization, partition, wars, and poverty, only to rise stronger than ever. The United States expected deference. What it received was dignity. Here lies the heart of the shock in Washington. For America, leadership has always meant obedience. Allies were expected to comply. Rivals were expected to bow or face consequences. But India is neither an obedient ally nor a submissive rival. India is something new, an equal partner. And equality is the one thing the old order struggles to grant. Because equality means that when Washington raises its finger, Delhi may choose to listen or may choose to ignore. Equality means that when America threatens sanctions, India may shrug and open doors to Moscow, to Tehran, to whoever it pleases. Equality means that the age of moral lectures from one capital is over. For years, America could spin narratives about freedom, democracy, and human rights while ignoring its own contradictions. Nations listened, sometimes grudgingly, because they felt they had no alternative. But today, there is an alternative. China's economy rivals America's. Russia defies Western sanctions with its own brutal calculations. Regional powers from Turkey to Brazil carve their own paths. And India has emerged as the voice of balance. Not isolation, not defiance, but balance. Jaishankar's statement is more than a diplomatic response. It is a declaration of maturity. He did not say India will never cooperate with America. On the contrary, India will cooperate, align, and even partner deeply when interests converge. But it will not obey. This is not hostility. This is not arrogance. This is clarity. And friends, clarity is what terrifies Washington the most. Friends, let us pause here and ask, why exactly did Jaishankar's words sting so deeply in Washington? After all, America has heard criticism before. Russia blusters, China threatens. Even European allies sometimes disagree. Why then did India's calm, measured voice sound so different, so unsettling? The answer lies in credibility. When Russia speaks, Washington dismisses it as aggression. When China speaks, America labels it authoritarian ambition. But when India speaks, India, the world's largest democracy, a nation that shares values of freedom and pluralism, the words carry a different moral weight. This is what Washington did not expect. For decades, American leaders assumed India, despite its size, would remain within the U.S. orbit. Yes, independent in tone, but aligned in substance. They believed India's growing economy, its need for technology, its security concerns with China. All these would keep Delhi dependent. But Jaishankar shattered that illusion. With composure, he declared that India will act not as a follower, but as a sovereign equal. And sovereignty, friends, is the one thing that cannot be negotiated. Think of the examples that prove this new reality. When Washington and Brussels demanded that India stop buying oil from Russia after the Ukraine war began, what did India do? It did not shout. It did not provoke. It simply kept buying, paying in rupees, paying in discounts, ensuring its citizens would not suffer from soaring global prices. And when questioned, Jaishankar delivered his now famous response. My first duty is to the Indian people. If Europe can prioritize its energy needs, why should India not do the same? That one sentence exposed the double standards of the so-called global order. Europe continued importing Russian gas for months, but criticized India for buying oil. And Jaishankar reminded the world that hypocrisy cannot be disguised as morality. This was not rebellion. This was reason. And reason, spoken with clarity, is far more dangerous to old powers than any slogan. Or take another example, defense partnerships. For decades, Washington tried to pressure India away from its traditional military ties with Russia. And yes, India has diversified. It buys advanced systems from the US and France and Israel. But when America threatened sanctions over India's purchase of Russian S-400 missile systems, Delhi did not retreat. It stood firm. Because sovereignty, my friends, means making choices based on national interest, not based on someone else's approval. This is why Jaishankar's message is larger than India versus America. It is about the world itself. The United States has long seen itself as the global referee, the one nation allowed to declare what is right and wrong. But Jaishankar's words reveal that the world no longer accepts a single referee. There are now multiple voices, multiple centers of legitimacy. China may be powerful, but its authoritarian model inspires suspicion. Russia is defiant, but isolated. Europe is wealthy, but divided. And then stands India, democratic, youthful, rising, respected across regions. It is this combination, moral weight and material power, that makes India's voice so potent. Friends, let me ask you this. What happens when a script that has been followed for 70 years suddenly changes? In Washington, policymakers are grappling with exactly that. For so long, they assumed allies would comply, rivals would contain themselves, and the U.S. would arbitrate global disputes. But now, India is saying the script must be rewritten. No more lectures, no more conditional partnerships, no more suspicion disguised as friendship, instead real partnerships built on equality, not hierarchy. This is why Washington is unsettled. Because equality feels like loss to those who are accustomed to supremacy. And yet, equality is the only path to lasting friendship. But here is the irony. America's shock is also its opportunity. If Washington can adjust, if it can accept that India is not a client state but an equal, then the U.S.-India relationship could become one of the most powerful partnerships of the 21st century. But this vision can only exist if suspicion gives way to respect. And so Jaishankar's words were not just a message to America. They were a test of whether Washington can evolve, whether it can embrace humility, whether it can move from dominance to partnership. For India has already made its choice. It will walk with America, but not behind America.